Hello, this is Sunil Ramakrishna. This is basically another part of the project words. So like this in project basically how many words basically are available. In this we were discussing charts basically. First chart is Gantt chart. G-A-I-N-T-T. Gantt also basically people says. And Gantt also basically people say Gantt chart. So this chart basically is, you can see the complete progress of the project basically. Complete progress of the project. Complete progress of the project means how many project in one project basically, how many tasks basically has been completed. If we see overall basically, for example, some delivery head basically told that basically यार मेरे को I have basically 5,000 project, so I want to know the status of each and every project basically. So that basically comes Gantt chart basically for that particular software delivery head basically. So this type of project also basically, this type of graph also basically has prepared basically in the project history basically. That software delivery head basically delivered 5,000 project basically. Just as a time basically he delivered 5. So how basically to handle that 5,000 project, how to know the exact time, this and everything. For that basically Excel basically was used. That time basically Excel was only in front of the public basically. But after that basically seeing this 5,000 project history basically, somebody basically created management tools. So like this the management tool started, like this the each and every stuff basically started. So first basically is a Gantt chart, G-A-N-T-T, Gantt chart. Gantt chart also basically people say exact progress of the PERT chart, P-E-R-T. PERT chart basically you can say the project progress basically. How much project progress basically has been done. And if once thing is getting effect, the another thing basically will get effect. Like this basically the PERT basically chart basically. WBS. Third is WBS. Work breakdown structure. That everybody knows. What is the work breakdown structure? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, phase 6. In phase basically 100 task, phase 2 basically 1000 task, phase 3 basically 2000 task, phase 4 basically 5000 task, phase 6 basically 7000 tasks. Like this basically the task basically are defined. That is basically called as a sprint also basically. Nowadays basically in agile methodology, previously basically the work breakdown structure basically was in waterfall, but nowadays basically the sprint word basically came after the agile methodology basically, which is basically the one of the methodology where basically the always changes basically happens. But that basically for that basically the control management plan basically are there. That is the control basically the people who do the control of the project basically. CCB basically as a cost changeable control board basically, you can say change control board basically. That also basically you can say as a name, give as a name. The definition basically the group who created CCB basically they have given the name as a change control board basically. You can give this name also if you, but in exam basically if it is asked then basically it would be change control board. This will be the exact name basically of the change CCB basically. So work breakdown structure also basically we know. In this basically work breakdown structure, the initialization comes, the planning comes, the design comes, the development comes, and that basically the SDLC everybody knows. Initialization, planning, designing, development, and testing basically. This is the 5 basically pillar of the SDLC basically. That is, one is the initialization, then the then the planning, the designing, development, and testing, and then basically shift the project to the development basically. That everybody knows basically. That basically comes into the base of the work breakdown structure basically is this. Then basically it comes as a flow chart basically, that everybody knows. If you are, for example, one login screen is getting developed, so somebody told that to develop the flow chart basically. So how you are going to develop it, that everybody knows basically. Flow chart basically, first basically comes the login screen. Then login screen basically there are 2 types of authentication. One is database level and second is Windows level. In login screen, basically the database level, basically that contains the database stuff. So database developer basically can develop that. In Windows authentication, the API is required, so normal developer basically can't develop that. So like this, basically the flow chart basically you can define basically, or you can basically draw basically. Then basically the cost effective chart, basically that everybody knows. One part is changed, if that part is changed, then the entire all part basically will get effect. So that basically is given as a cost effective chart basically. Parrot chart basically everybody knows, that is basically the bar chart and the line chart combinations basically you can say. Then the bar chart everybody knows, pie chart everybody knows, bar chart everybody knows. X and Y basically the square basically comes into the picture, that is bar chart. Pie chart basically everybody knows. Then the burn up chart, basically burn up chart means completed task. The exact definition is how much work basically you have completed against the scope total project. So against the scope means the boundary of the project. Against that, basically how much task you have completed. That is as a given as a name as a burn up chart. Basically, burn up means how much task has been completed basically against the scope. Scope is a boundary of the project basically. So against scope, basically how many project basically, how many task has been completed. Then the control chart, basically everybody knows, total control of the project basically how much. Then the burn down chart basically you can say remaining work against the scope given task, against the scope of the project basically is given. Again the scope, basically how many task has been remaining, basically the project remaining task. That the remaining task basically you can say, for example, login screen database level task is done, but the API task basically is pending basically. So that API pending basically comes as a burn down chart, and burn up basically is database level task basically. That is the burn up, that means task has been completed basically. In that then another is the velocity chart, basically everybody knows, the total starting point taken in the scope basically, that is taking in the velocity chart basically. They are getting completed information basically. In the story point is given and the sprint is given. One side is a story point and another side is a sprint basically. So x and y basically, y x basically, x and y basically. So chart basically is everything basically, x and y diagram basically. There are two data, x data and y data basically. So in next video basically we are going to see a little bit more about the another words basically which are basically spoken in the IT industry, in the project management industry.